Unturned is presented by UpdateAI.
How do you, as a CCO, stay close to the end users, to the customers? How are you informing the decisions that you're making, broad scope, from the customer standpoint?
Collaboration was probably more inconsistent. I think now it's definitely increased and a lot more consistent across all of our territories and drive teams. So I think it's been a great outcome.
Was this a tough case for you to build? Did you have any obstacles in building this case?
There he is, Mr. Josh Schachter. Schachter?
Well, whenever you're ready, John. Actually, Rachel, I don't know how to pronounce your last name. Orston?
Orston. Easy.
Oh, okay. Nailed it. Fine. Jon Johnson? Is that it?
Jon Johnson. Yes.
Jon Johnson. Okay. All right. Well, welcome everybody to this episode of Unchurned. I'm Josh Schachter, your co-host with Jon Johnson, where we talk to the leaders of the customer success world. And we have like a real leader this time, a real. Yeah. Like the realest of leaders. 800 FTEs underneath her, publicly traded company, 80% or something like that, market share. Lots of things. We can keep going on the accolades, but I would like to introduce everybody to Rachel Orston, who is the Chief Customer Officer at Instructure. Rachel, thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here. And I will say Instructure is an amazing company. For those of you that may wonder about the market share, we're not 80%. I wish we were, but we're approaching that in the high ed space. You may recognize the brand Canvas. Instructure is the makers of Canvas. So if you have a kid in K through 12 or a high ed student or hopefully a lifelong learner at some stage, hopefully they are using not just our flagship product Canvas, but several of our other products, including Studio and Impact and Learn. And our recent acquisition, Parchment. We are a market leader in the higher education space, but with growing market leadership in K-12, and we're growing our footprint internationally. So it's an exciting time to be in education.
John, do you see what just happened there?
She corrected you? You were wrong.
She corrected me.
Important.
That's what was important. But this is executive training. So she knew that comms was going to come after me right after the taping of this episode if I let it say 8. Yeah. What's that?
I just went right into it.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. No, but our producer also told us that we needed to tighten up the intros a little bit. So you nailed it.
I think she told you that, John. But so Instructure, market leader, the operating system, so to speak, of education. You've got 14,000 customers and 40 million users that use your platform. You are the 5th largest trafficked site for teens 18 to 25 behind.
I think
YouTube.
I've got it was one of the things that drew me to the company. Both my kids were K-12 Canvas kids, and now they're both at universities that use Canvas. And I joke, like, if they're not on TikTok or Snapchat or doing whatever, I hope that they're in Canvas, and they are. I mean, that's where they're doing the bulk of their work. They're communicating with their teachers. They're uploading their homework. They're taking their tests, and so on and so forth. So it's a big deal.
Do you have access to see if your kids?
I do not. I have no superpowers to change. As much as my kids would love that, I have no superpowers to change grades or anything of the sort. So absolutely.
Yeah. My eldest just graduated from high school and is going into higher ed. And I was actually going to ask you if you could help me out.
Yeah. Make sure they're in class.
Yeah, for sure. No magic powers when it comes to that. But it's an amazing product and really impacting the lives of students globally and educators. Look, teaching's a hard job. Forget the students, right? I mean, look at teachers.
Yeah, forget the students.
It's all about making their lives easier and creating an engaging experience. I mean, COVID was really hard. I actually got to know Canvas very well during COVID. I got to know my kids a lot better through Canvas and understanding their challenges. I think online learning, is here to stay. As a matter of fact, we see more online learning and, teachers and institutions leveraging online post-COVID now than we did pre-COVID. So I think it's like remote work. I think that this is a new normal for education.
Yeah. So no backdoor access, unlike when my best friend Stefan, my first job in tech at eHarmony, asked me if the girl that he really liked had closed him out yet in the matching algorithm or whether he was still alive. And so when I went into admin mode and said, nope, she hasn't hasn't messaged anybody else. You're still in play. And now they're married with 3 kids. So,
oh my gosh, that's impressive.
Yeah.
And a little scary, but.
And a little scary. And a little scary. All right. We move on. We talk about Instructure. But I actually, Rachel, we didn't prep on this, but I want to throw a pseudo curveball here because I was going through your LinkedIn profile.
Sure.
And you've got a wonderful background. You've been, logo serial here, right? Starting with Showtime and Turner Media and all these things. And then you did this, 8-year stint as founder and COO of CoThrive. And when I read the CoThrive, CoThrive.
That's right.
And so a startup that helps companies make and keep commitments all with an email. And I thought to myself, well, this was before she got into CX and CS and those aspects of her career. But there's something maybe there because when we think about customer success, we think about accountability to customers, keeping commitments on both sides, et cetera. I actually want to hear a little bit about CoThrive and maybe how that kind of shaped you into your next role, which was more customer centric.
Oh gosh. Okay. I will try to make this as short as possible, but my early days were all in digital media. I actually, CNN is what brought me to Atlanta almost 30 years ago. I thought I wanted to be a broadcast journalist and ended up taking a left turn in technology. But while I was at EMC and I sold high-end storage into the film industry, I was doing a ton of cross collaboration with developers and project managers and delivering services across the world. And coordination for large accounts was really hard, right? You own big customers, and managing all the different deliverables globally was very difficult. And again, you have to remember this was 2003. This is in the early 2000s. The tools that we have today, Slack, Asana, all the online project management stuff. I use Superhuman. I'm a huge fan of that now too. Front, none of that existed, right? And so, long story short, a gentleman and I who worked together at EMC, we left EMC to start this company called CoThrive. We actually took EMC as our first customer because we had created this kind of approach and methodology to coordinating work with an email. And then from there, we actually built a software that sat on top of Microsoft Outlook. I know Microsoft Outlook is I know that dates me right there, but we did. And then we brought on Microsoft as a client and Sony and a couple logos. And it was a nice run. It was a nice boutique consulting / we had our own proprietary software business. And it was really just in the whole future of work space, like collaboration, project management, et cetera. I loved it. It was pretty cool.
Yeah. And then you've worked at some really cool places since then, in some great roles and now being at Instructure. So let's talk a little bit about Instructure, going back to how you're running, post sales over there. You mentioned a little bit about we've talked to the market share and whatnot, but tell us a little bit about the segments of your customers at Instructure and maybe some of the hallmark customers that you do have.
Yeah, we have a pretty diverse set of segments, right? We sell into the high ed space, so think both at the private and public. So we have some of the largest public institutions that you would be familiar with, everything from the UC system to Michigan, University of Florida, et cetera, right? To the entire California community college system, right? So higher ed is like I said, we're the largest market share leader here in the U.S., but we also have a global footprint with customers like Oxford University, St. Andrews, et cetera. K-12, same thing. So we, as another segment, so we have K-12, which is also private, but also large system-wide districts. So think statewide, we're statewide systems where entire states, use Canvas for their K-12 programs. And then we've got professional learning, which is really more like accreditation or certification. So think about certified financial accountants, right? To become we have CFA as a customer. So to become a certified financial accountant, you need to go through a certification or courseware. So that's a segment of ours. So that's kind of how we look at our segments in terms of buying centers. And then with Parchment, we also sell diplomas and evidences of learning. So the registrar, is a big buying center for us. And that spans all of our segments, right? If you think about K-12 needs diplomas, universities need diplomas and evidence of learning. So we sell
I thought knowledge was evidence of learning. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Well, as somebody who can't get his diploma printed because my college went out of business, welcome to America. It's a very important part of education.
It is. It's a huge part. And things like dual enrollment, right? Just transcripts. So when we talk about evidence, it's not just the diploma, but the transcripts, right? That prove that you've taken a course or that you have these credits and whatnot. So that's kind of how we look at, our different buying centers. We sell to different buying centers. So think registrar, think provost chancellor, think superintendent. And then we have our formal segments, high ed, K-12, and then international, which is a little bit of a combination of both. Our size of our deals really range. We sell to small schools, a couple hundred students, all the way to statewide systems where we're negotiating at the, we have lobbyists, we work at the state levels with state legislature, state officials. And so they can be quite complex to like what you guys would consider to be like a mid-market or small, institution.
So it can be like, we're talking like 10,000 to 10 million ACV or something.
Easily.
I mean,
100. Yep. There.
Okay. So at 10,000, you're the principal or, the headmaster, mistress or something like that, or somebody in their ops team. At the UC system, you're what, like, is it Janet Napolitano? Like you're like one of the, right? Wasn't she the head of the program, the UC system? Maybe I was like 10 years ago.
Actually, many of the systems have their own CIOs. So they actually have CIOs or digital or heads of digital transformation that are responsible for driving digital transformation, or they're part of the CIO suite within the state to help drive that across their institutions or participating districts.
So I guess my point is like, it seems like it's such a wide range of who your ICP is, but then also the folks that your team is interfacing with after the initial sale. It seems to me to be like, or am I off track on that?
I mean, yes and no. I think I don't want to overcomplicate it. At the end of the day, I mean, they're all educators, right? To some degree, most of our CSMs and our post-sales team, one of the things I'm really proud of is many of them come from education or they're post-campus users themselves, right? I would say that we definitely engage at what would be in the corporate world, the executive level, right? So we have conversations and QBRs with those provosts, with those CIOs. But then our day-to-day is no different than I think a lot of other CSMs have, where we're dealing with the administrators who administer Canvas. If you're a large institution, you have a dedicated Canvas administrator, if not one, but probably many Canvas administrators operating Canvas for us. So those kind of comprise a lot of our day-to-day contacts are the administrators that are working Canvas. And then of course there's teacher education too. And so we spend a lot of time with teachers, getting them comfortable with our software, and that's through our training and also our professional services teams.
It's one thing that I'm curious about too is when it comes to strategy, when it comes to enablement and engagement, you're dealing with a lot of folks that, I mean, if they're instructors, they're teaching every single day, right? It's hard enough for me to get, as a software guy who's sitting at their desk available for a Zoom, to get on an enablement call. So when you're talking about these big, huge rocks from a program standpoint, from a strategy standpoint, how do you think about just getting folks into the tool? And then what are some of those metrics that you look at, obviously from your high level view, that kind of trickle down into the individual users with the admins, with the CIOs, with the folks that are actually in the tool?
Yeah, there's a bunch of things that we look at without getting too in the weeds. We have part of, I think, what makes Canvas so compelling and why I think we are the market leader is you have to be incredibly easy to use. Like ease of use has to be so critical. And so we have a lot of functionality to enable educators to get up to speed very, very quickly. And we've even created versions of our software, take K through third grade. Take take the little ones, for example. We've kind of reskinned our product so that it's super easy both for the educator and that little student, that younger one, to engage with Canvas and to create courseware. So we have different levels of usability, which is, core to kind of our priorities in terms of student experience is at the heart of what we do, so that it's super easy to get, onboarded and get started at all levels. We have on-demand training, which is pretty powerful. And we've done this enough times that we have a whole kind of approach to how we roll Canvas out. So if you're a university for the first time using Canvas, we have a whole program in terms of how do we train the trainer, how do we train the teachers, how do we kind of mobilize them to be activated as quickly as possible. And the way that we measure our success is in initial course creation. There's a couple big things. There's also integration with what's called the SIS, which is the Student Information Center. That's where think of it as like the HR system. You have to integrate with the HR, if you're depending on what type of system. So it's the SIS integration is a big milestone for us. Are we integrated well there and moving data over? And we look at course engagement. And then finally, once things are up and running, student engagement, right? What's the level of students logging in? How long are they spending time in the classes? Et cetera, et cetera. So utilization, engagement on a course, literally down to the course level, are things that we look at. I know I'm going fast, but that's
no, you're fine.
Hey, everybody, it's Josh. I'm taking a quick break from the podcast to tell you a bit about UpdateAI. I started UpdateAI to solve two major challenges for CS teams. The first is that we save CSMs 4 to 5 hours per week with our productivity through AI. Secondly, we give leaders a window into all the conversations across each account and the entire portfolio. So we help knowledge transfer, we help increase the coverage model of your CS teams, and we help you detect emerging patterns in what your customers are telling your CSMs across all the risks, product feedback, advocacy moments, and expansion opportunities. So come check us out at www.updateai. It's completely free to sign up and trial.
With all, that sounds, I love the simplification. I love the idea of obviously starting simple. How do you, as a CCO, stay close to the end users, to the customers? How are you informing the decisions that you're making, broad scope, from the customer standpoint?
Yeah, there's a number of ways that we do that. First of all, it's a really good question. And I'm new to Instructure, right? I joined in January. And to be clear, I'm not an educator. I didn't come from the education space. So I was really sensitive to this question and to this thing of being, coming in new to a company as large as Instructure and as well established and not having that pedigree and saying, to your point, how do I establish myself with our customers? I think a lot of it I really did that. And I've probably met now with probably well over 150, well, definitely more through our customer conferences. I've met with hundreds of customers now through a couple key areas. One is QBRs. So we spend a lot of time on site with our customers and just shadowing and listening to their needs and using that as an opportunity to introduce myself. The second thing is we have customer advisory boards in different regions and different segments, which is really helpful. We also do several big flagship events a year. We've got our main InstructureCon event where we have over 3,000 attendees, and we have an executive track that we run there. And we also run what's called Canvas cons or Canvas events in different regions internationally. And then we have user groups called Canvas Connects, and I get to attend those as well, or I get readouts from those. So I can't be everywhere. So recordings and readouts from those meetings are also a way that I can stay in touch, even if I can't physically be there. But I got to Diamond, let's put it this way, just from a travel perspective, I made Diamond within my first 6 months on the job.
Which airline?
Delta.
That's pretty.
Delta.
Yes.
Okay, as long as it's not United, we're good.
Yeah,
well, she's Atlanta, of course.
I know, I'm Raleigh too, so Delta's
Yeah, Delta. It's that. Well, I've been in Atlanta for 30 years, but I think it's for us. It's a lot of Instructure's, to its credit, is very much a get out of the building culture, which I love. They are getting out, getting on the ground, going to the universities.
Yeah, and when you're talking about that was actually, you answered one of my questions, just when it comes to virtual versus in person. You're a remote organization, as I understand, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so there is a big drive for your folks, and they're empowered to go on site with customers. How do you think about when it comes to opportunity? So you're the CCO. Obviously, there's certain roles and responsibilities that you have to have, but what's the opportunity for folks to kind of bring you onto those moments on site with customers to engage value, to engage opportunity, growth even?
Ask the question again, John.
I didn't understand the question either, Rachel. Just to be fair, it's not you.
That's
it's
fine.
him.
We can edit this out or not.
No. No. We're keeping this. We're keeping
No,
this.
I mean, one of my favorite things is bringing my leaders on site. Is engaging with my executives when there's opportunity for growth, when there's opportunity for expansion. How are your teams engaging with you to identify where those opportunities are outside of perhaps the conference or the one-ups?
I have a philosophy on this one. I'm going to take this one in a little bit of a different direction.
That's great.
I actually think people bring in leaders at the wrong times, typically when stuff's gone south and they need to like save a deal or like to close something. And I think the best time to actually bring a leader is when you're just building the relationship, like when there's no agenda. And so that's why I was struggling with your question, John, is like, I want to get to know people when it's just getting to know them and there's absolutely no agenda. So typically the things that I like to do is like, and I've done this a couple of times, even just in the short time I've been with Instructure, is when a new provost starts or a new chancellor, because we have a lot of, changes in our landscape. And I've learned this actually in the education space. There's more turnover than I would expect. Like superintendents move around and provosts move around. I'm like, wow, people hop around. There's a lot of movement from different institutions. So anytime that there's a new executive, I think that's a great opportunity to just build a relationship, get to know them. Hopefully they came from a school that they're already familiar with us and they've used us. But it's a great opportunity to introduce myself and just honestly have zero agenda. That way, when an opportunity does come up or there is an issue, we're not meeting for the first time. Like I hate to meet with a customer, especially at an executive level, under bad circumstances. That's just a horrible experience.
I love that.
I don't like to meet them for the first time too, when we're trying to like get them to, throw $1 at us. I think both of those feel very disingenuous. And I just don't feel like it's the best experience for them or for us. Right.
Yeah, I agree with you completely on that. And for the listeners, we'll define what a provost is in our show notes. I'm going to have to look that up too.
Well, let's Rachel, what's a provost? They're like they're the CEO of the university. Is that effectively it?
Yes, or their school, right? You could have different, a university could have different schools, and schools there could be more than one provost, but depending on the.
But usually, aren't they also usually like educators as well? They're not just pure business people.
Yeah. My colleague, Melissa Lobel, is amazing. I'm also very lucky that I have a chief academic officer who owns like the pedagogy and a lot of the academic thought leadership, because she is an educator as well. She teaches at UC Irvine as well and works at Instructure. So I wish Melissa was with me because she could probably correct me and answer that question much better than I
was.
So Rachel, you've been there for almost a year. By the time this episode comes out, it'll probably be about a year.
Yeah.
And you've got 800 people underneath you. You've got 100 CSMs, plus you have professional services, global support, renewals, community, et cetera. We talked a little bit before about some of the big things that have occurred. It sounds like it's been a very busy 2024 for you. Yeah. You've shifted the CS org in a way to variable comp. And now there's more focus on retention, cross-sell, upsell, pipe generation, like the revenue-bearing functions. You've got this drive team model. You finished building out an entire new digital team.
Yep. And in the Philippines. Very excited.
Yeah, in the Philippines. And then you've also got this new to you, like the seasonality behind, a business, which has never happened before, right? But we know the seasonality of the school year. Let's dive into one or two of those. I don't know. You have a preference?
No, I'll let you. I'll dealer's choice. Go for it.
Okay, John, what do you think? Variable comp, drive team.
I'm curious about variable comp.
Okay, of course you are.
Oh, so Josh, you this was a transition, right? So you just kind of threw me on a bus there, Josh. I love it.
Exactly.
Comp has been a big conversation around CS. So when you're talking about variable, are you looking at? Give me your thought process on where you came from versus where you're going.
Okay. Well, I've actually feel like I've innovated quite a bit in this one. I've always been consistent on a couple things. I've tried a bunch of different things. I actually put a LinkedIn blog around this, which you could link in there if you want to, Josh. At some point, you could look at it.
We will.
But I think I'm big on aligning CS to other functions of the business. And I think Instructure is doing that very well with this concept that we call the drive team, which is a pod. Think of it as like a pod where within a territory and within a segment that we talked about before, whether that's higher ed or K-12, you have an account executive, you have a CSM, you have a renewal specialist, everybody's kind of working together and singing off the same sheet of music. And so when I think about comp design, I always look at it as I want to make sure whatever the components are that they're aligning to the other roles in the business, and everybody feels like the incentives are not they're not creating friction, right? They're doing the exact opposite. So for our CSMs, they're actually comped on 3 components, of which every other member of the drive team, including our sales, are comped on as well. That is renewal rate is a component, pipe and pipe conversion. So our CSMs have pipe targets, and I think actually one of the biggest objectives of a CSM is to drive and identify opportunities. So
that would be like a CSQL
setup.
Yeah.
And actually, I spoke and coined the CSQL when I spoke at Gainsight. I came from marketing and did a presentation about
no way.
On the CSQL. Yes.
Oh, buried the lead on that one. Are you kidding me?
I feel like I take credit for CSQL. And then lastly, actually new sales, which is a bit probably controversial, but I think CSM,
not in this group.
They have a very small component of their comp is on driving ARR and new bookings. So there you go.
That sounds great.
How do you get a bunch of educators as CSMs into that mindset? I know that's not a you question. I know you've got the directors and the VPs below you, but that just something that jumps out when you bring so many educators in. Obviously, it makes sense in the space. But then getting them to kind of think revenue-wise, like that's...
Why, they don't want to make money?
Well, conversations around revenue are different than making money.
I don't know. Yeah. It sounds like a slam dunk. She's got them like rightly motivated to sell, to find leads, and to upsell and renew. It sounds amazing to me.
I love it.
But actually, John, I'm glad you brought it up, because it's not. I think moving anybody from a not variable to a variable comp is always a transition, whether they're an educator or not. I just think mentally, like going from now I've got, you've got the opportunity to make more money, but just thinking that way, that mentality of base to base plus variable, I've seen it be hard for people regardless of what industry they come with or they come from. And I think it's hard, and I'll be honest with you, it's not a fit for everybody. And I actually think that's what distinguishes. I think a good CSM should be comfortable with variable comp, period, regardless of the background. And if you're not, you're probably not going to be a good profile for a CSM, at least a CSM in my in my profile of organizations. That's not to say you wouldn't be successful in another company that maybe doesn't have that, but I firmly believe that that's part of being a CSM is having that performance kind of mindset in the profile of a CSM. Maybe that's another conversation for another time.
Yeah.
Well,
you also won't find any arguments from us on that too, because we've had many of those conversations. So I love it.
And that's not even the whole CSM sales and where do they sit. That's the debate that keeps going. That's the gift that keeps giving. But I think that regardless of that, I think that that's just a hallmark of a good CSM.
So how are the CSMs in your org then? Maybe like how is their constitution a little different than CSMs in other orgs? Do you find, because maybe there is different motivations for them?
I think there is different motivations. I think the variable was, to be honest with you, a tough transition. So I think it has been hard for them. But I think what underpins it is I think they really care about making an impact. And when they see that the work that they're doing and driving an impact can actually help make them more money, and they can see that essentially they're getting paid for doing a lot of the stuff that they were doing before. Seriously, I think it started to click and get very exciting for them. And I think too, aligning with their sales peers was actually, I think they are collaborating more than they ever have with their sales peers. Whereas I think previously there was probably not as much of that collaboration. Let's put it this way, I think the collaboration was probably more inconsistent. I think now it's definitely increased and a lot more consistent across all of our territories and drive teams. So I think it's been a great outcome.
Was this a tough case for you to build? Did you have any obstacles in building this case?
No, the case was actually already developed when I joined. So the decision was made. I made some of the changes to like the plan details, but the decision to do variable was made when I joined. It was already budgeted for and made.
And so when you talk about the benefits of sales and CS getting a little bit closer together, can you double click into that a little bit. In what vivid ways has that occurred that you see tighter alignment?
We actually just rolled out something called the opportunity grid. And maybe I could see if I could snag a template if I have permission to share, but think of it as like white space analysis, right? So if you're trying to identify opportunities, we've created this template called the opportunity grid. And then we do QBRs together. So we just did QBRs in San Francisco where our CS leaders present with our sales leaders. So, they work on things and then they walk through their opportunity grids, for the quarter, et cetera. So I think we've created, it's not just about putting people together and saying, hey, you guys are part of a drive team, good luck. But I think it's also equipping them with the right, tools and templates and processes so that they come together thoughtfully in the right ways, right? And so I think we're starting to do that with things like, joint QBRs, opportunity grids, things of that nature.
And what tools, you hear a lot about how, sales is in Salesforce and CS doesn't take advantage of Salesforce as much and CS is in Gainsight or in a CS platform and sales isn't there. What tools are you using to bring these folks together closer?
We are, and by the way, I should do a plug. We are moving forward with Winning by Design, also in doing a common methodology and language. I've used Winning by Design in my last 2 companies, and they'll be working with Instructure on our methodology moving forward. Because I also think that's a big unifying. Is like, are you all speaking the same language from like a methodology and approach? I think Winning by Design does a really good job. So that's just a plug for them on that. But tool wise, obviously Salesforce, Gainsight. CS uses Gainsight. Our renewals team uses Gainsight. We use Clary. We use Front in email collab.
Oh yeah.
That's probably the biggest, probably the most predominant tools today. Salesforce, Clary, Gainsight, and Front. And then, of course, I use Koros, and there's other things for services and support. But if we're just talking customer success, those would be the main.
Okay. So no magic between the drive teams is like the systems that are universally,
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I actually think we made it to our time. So, Rachel, we want to let you get going. I can only imagine what your schedule looks like. But we are super honored to have had you on the show today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Appreciate it.
We'd love to have you back sometime, maybe in the new year. We can talk about year 2 in the role and the evolution of driving more of these things with your CS team. And thank you so much for being on the show today.
It was my pleasure. Thank you both.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thanks.
Yeah, you bet.